Alright, in this video, going to be pulling the transmission out of this XC90. So, this car has a couple issues going with it. We have a giant rear main seal leak. Now, it's had that since, at least since we've got it, which was 80,000 miles. The rear main seal leak has gotten a lot worse, like really bad. And it's just starting to make this car a little bit undrivable. And the other thing that this car has is the transmission likes to flare, and it also shudders. Now when these transmissions shudder, it's because the torque converter clutches are going bad, so you gotta replace the torque converter. So it's another reason. Now the next one, the oil pan. This car has some weird oil pressure, and my 98 to 99 had some O-rings that failed in the oil pan. So for this car, it has an upper and a lower oil pan, and you gotta take those. So just take both of those off, which conveniently you have to remove the subframe for that. And the next thing that it has is the bevel gear or angle gear is failing on this car, especially right at about 50 miles an hour. When you load it up, the bevel gear makes a horrendous noise, which is, maybe a little bit concerning. Mainly, it's very annoying, and if you're going downhill and you let off, it starts to vibrate pretty badly. And if you can feel it inside, I can't imagine how much it's vibrating on the engine. So that's failing. Now this car has already had the rear differential that has the bearings have failed in there, so the rear differential was replaced, and also the Haldex unit was also replaced because all the clutches in there were burned. They were all burned up. So what I think might have happened is the previous owner must have done something stupid to this car, which destroyed the entire all-wheel drive system, including the torque converter. Now the V8s do tend to burn through the torque converter clutches, but it really depends on how you drive it. Right now we only have 115,000 miles on this car, so really low miles. But without that, now obviously you're going to be removing the subframe, so you need a way to support the engine. Now I'm going with 2 engine support bars. You can support it how you think is safe, because this engine, if it falls out, I'm not going to have a car anymore. But anyway, besides that, right now I'm just starting to take some stuff apart here, trying to see what needs to come out before I lift the car up and put it on jack stands. Alright, so far I've put the engine support bars in place. I have 2 of them, and before I put the car up on jack stands, I removed 2 bolts. Oh, I just touched something for a while. I removed 2 of the bell housing bolts. They're right down there. If you notice here, I've removed some coolant lines here. That's because I am replacing some of them. I also disconnected here. There are a couple leads on the starter. There's 2 leads with the positive, and then there's a negative back there. Oh, I just touched the coolant line, so now coolant is falling on the floor. No. Anyway, so now the next step would be to remove the subframe. Now, the Volvo instructions from Vita tell you to take the fan out. That is I guess if you want to, you can take it out, but for me, it looks like there's enough room for there that it doesn't need to come out, but I suppose we will see if that backfires. Besides that, here, I don't really have anything apart underneath here yet. The subframe's not held on by a lot of bolts, but let's go ahead and take them all off. Also, the other thing I took off is this shield that was under here. I guess not really a shield, but to take that off, it's not too difficult. You have to undo the bracket here that holds this transmission line, and then there's going to be 3 bolts on each side that you undo, and then it comes right off. I also have already drained the oil, and I'm going to drain the transmission fluid, and hopefully today we will have the angle gear out and maybe the transmission. I'm not sure. Alright, I removed the secondary cats. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this engine ready to be all supported, and then drop the subframe. Alright, so I removed all the bolts holding on the steering rack. So there are 5 of them. There's one there, one in the hole right there. Same thing on this side, one there, one in the hole. And then in this hole there's a 13mm. All the other ones are 15. Next, you have a bracket right here that, as far as I can tell, I didn't see it in the Vita instructions, but as far as I can tell, this needs to come off. So I undid that. There's a 8mm bolt on there. Now this car is pretty rusty and everything's come out fairly easily. However, the previous owner replaced the steering rack on this car about, I think, a year before we bought it, so that may be why all this has been apart before. So now I think I'm gonna try and go up there and see if I can undo a couple of the propeller shaft bolts, and then slowly move my way forward, undoing everything that's on the subframe. Actually, never mind. The bolt here, the steering rack only has 4 bolts. The 13 in here is the engine mount. I thought that looked strange. So this is the engine mount. And if you're since you removed the subframe, you may want to replace your engine mounts. I already replaced them on this car about 1 year ago, so they definitely do not need to be replaced. So actually there are 5 bolts on the steering rack. The engine mount bolt is above the sway bar. So I'm going to do it, I'm going to see if I should be able to get it from the top, not the bottom bolt, but the top bolt, and then the engine mount will just come down with the subframe. I've undone the outer tie rod end ball joint, also undone the bolt on the lower control arm. I've removed the transmission torque mount, and I've also undone the rear engine mounts bolts that hold it on. Now I did it from the bottom. The sway bar is really in the way, so it's not very easy to get to it. I was able to sneak it in with a very small socket. It's not very tight anyway. Now the next thing to do is, all I need to do now is undo the front engine mount. I need to find out where this is connected here, and this subframe is ready to come out. Alright, so I'm dropping it very, very slowly, starting with the back. I didn't touch the front. The engine is fully hanging. Now, as you drop it, you need to make sure that nothing is still attached. So that's why you want to do it real slow. One thing here is that there's some steering racks have a little plug on them. Mine does. So I just disconnected that. You have to come around here, disconnect it, and just make sure that everything's disconnected. Now something, I don't remember if I recorded it, but you need to go inside the car and disconnect the steering column from the rack. If I didn't record that, I'll just plug that in the beginning of the video, because if you drop this with that still connected, I guess if you're lucky the rack will just stay, but if you're unlucky you might break something. Alright, so on the driver's side here, no, this is the passenger side, there is a 8mm bolt there you have to undo that the hose is attached to, and then a little bit further up there is a clip that you can use a screwdriver to undo. So on the back there are 2 zip ties that you have to undo that hold on the O2 wiring, and then on the front here this is an 8mm bolt that I just undid, which holds another wire. Besides that, I think there's now nothing attached on this subframe, and I can drop it out all the way. I have the jack in the back, and then I'm just using this transmission jack up front here. Alright, so now we have the subframe out. Now that we have it out, I can see that the sway bar bushings are completely destroyed. That's why they're clunking really badly and squeaking. But besides that, I had to leave one arm up there. It's completely stuck on there. I managed to hit this arm with a hammer, a big 4-pound hammer to get it out. Now these axles, it doesn't matter what Volvo you're working on, they're always really difficult to get out. Oh, look, the spring's rusty. They're always really difficult to get out, and it's just really annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get it out, but if I can't get it out, I'll probably just leave it in there. I don't think it'll get in the way to pull the transmission out. Of course, I don't want to damage any of the boots. This axle is, I think it's like 2 years old. It's not very old at all. A lot of money has been dumped into this car, and this car just wants more and more and more. Alright, so I had to remove the cooling fan. So to remove the cooling fan, there's one 8mm there, one 8mm there. Then you need to go under the vehicle, under the car, whatever. You need to loosen that bolt up there, which holds the whole radiator assembly up. You need to loosen it up all the way until you have like only two or three threads in, but don't take it off all the way, otherwise this whole thing's gonna fall. And then after you've loosened it that much, there are more 8mm on the back here, which is that's gonna be on top of the fan here. This is the top of the fan. It's up on the corners here, and you should be able to get those with an 8mm and sneak those out. Now I've already removed the 4 top bolts off the exhaust manifold. Now I'm getting the 4 other ones, which are right back there. Now you can't really see very much. When you shine a light, you can easily see all of those bolts. Now make sure you put penetrating fluid on the exhaust manifold bolts, or rather on practically on a lot of stuff, because otherwise you're gonna break it when you take it off. Another thing I took off is the front engine mount, which has been pushed all the way back here. Here it is. So, here it is. There it is, the bracket. So, conveniently, all these bolts are at different levels. With this engine mount here. Now, whoever designed this is clearly evil, because they made this. Look at all these bolts, they're all different levels. Why would you do that? Anyway, makes it harder to get it out. And this fits in there like that. Now, it's not easy to get these bolts, but you'll manage to get them out. Alright, got the front exhaust manifold off. Now, next thing to do is to undo the propeller shaft back there on the angle gear, and then remove the rear exhaust manifold, and then the bevel gear bevel gear, angle gear can finally come out. Now, interestingly, one of these, I guess you can't see it on camera, but if you look in there, for some reason, this one is almost white in there. It's very clean compared to all the other ones, which is not something I really want to see. Now, this car does not lose any coolant at all, so just a little strange that it looks like that. Anyway, here we have our catalytic converter, our O2 sensor, and there is an O2 extender there because this catalytic converter doesn't really function anymore. Going to be fixing that before it goes back in by putting a longer O2 extender on it. That's definitely the proper fix. Alright, so we got the front exhaust manifold off. Now I'm on the back of the engine here, so I removed the bracket the axle carrier bearing bracket. There's 4 13mm on there. And then on this shield here, which actually the new angle gear will not use this shield, it's a different style angle gear. This one has 3 8mm, one on top, bottom, bolted here and there, and then a tiny little one bolted in the back. Alright, so I removed the 4 out of the 8 bolts on the second exhaust manifold. Now, to get to the top ones, I just lowered the engine because I can't get to those on the top. So you're supposed to lower the engine anyway to remove the transmission. So I just lowered it. Now the way I lowered it is I got the jack under there, jacked it up a tiny bit, and then loosened that to where I liked it, and then lowered it with the jack. I don't really trust these threads on there to just use that to lower it. I think they're probably going to break. So anyway, now I can get to the top exhaust manifold bolts and get it off. Alright, so I got it out. I used for the last bolt, which is way up in the corner up there, right next to the alternator, I used this, and exhaust manifold bolts are not very tight, so you should, as long as you sprayed them a day before with penetrating fluid, they should come out very easily. It shouldn't be too hard. The rest of them, I just used this long one. Now, something I did have to do was I lowered the engine a lot. Here it is here, so I lowered more in the back here, but I also had to lower the front here, which not really what I wanted to do, but there's plenty of room still. You can see the entire engine has now rocked that way, so that's going to be very fun when I get the subframe, when I get to the point to get the subframe back in. But for the moment, now something I did not disconnect was the propeller shaft, which is up there, and the only reason I didn't disconnect it is that it prevents the engine from rocking back and forth this way. Obviously, if you push the engine really hard, you are going to, that propeller shaft has a CV joint in it, and you may damage it if you do that, but it holds the engine nice and steady, which makes the car feel a lot safer when you're underneath it. Now the next thing to remove is a shield and a couple brackets here. Now, and then we're gonna, I guess, I'll get that out, then we'll get the transmission out, and when everything goes back in, I will compare that angle gear or bevel gear to the new one I have, which is a different style one. It is not the same one, so we'll just be able to see how different they are. Supposedly, the newer one is supposed to be upgraded. I don't know about that. These bevel gears or angle gears are known to the splines in there. There's a collar, and they're known for those splines to fail. Then you just entirely lose all-wheel drive, your rear wheels basically. And after that, you also make a really big noise. But that is not the problem I have with this one. The issue I have with this one is the bearings inside of it have failed. Otherwise, the all-wheel drive system works fine. One other thing, I had to remove the top O2 sensor on this, which is conveniently on the other side, but I have the O2 sensor right over here. Now, as long as you use penetrating fluid and let it soak, the O2 sensor should come out really easily. I just use an adjustable wrench for it, and it doesn't take that much force to take it out. Now, this car was originally from Chicago, so it is kind of rusty. And as long as you use penetrating fluid, you should not have any issues with stuff coming off. Unless it's so rusty that the bolts are no longer existent, that they're like fused to the surrounding metal, then you might have a problem. Alright, so I removed all these bolts here. These are the 2 bolts that go into the oil pan onto a bracket that's on the angle bevel gear, and then that's the little heat shield that's underneath it. It's got 3 8mm bolts. Now, one thing I found concerning here is I found a bunch of bolts that were loose, just hand tight. So I don't know if someone's been in here before. It is possible, I suppose. But anyway, I think I need to remove that bracket right there before I could pull the angle gear off. So I'll just go ahead and do that. Alright, so here's the bevel gear. There are 7 13mm, that's not focusing, there we go, 13mm bolts that you need to remove, and then it can come out. Now, I also removed the engine mount bracket there. The reason I did that is that I'm pulling the transmission. If you were just pulling this out, then you would just pull the bevel gear out, or angle gear. That, you can leave it alone. But anyway, now we have this noisy bevel gear on the jack here. I looked at all the splines in there, which is where this bevel gear usually strips. They look great. They look brand new. So I'm pretty sure this looks like the original one from the car. I don't think anybody's replaced this. And if you spin this, there's quite a bit of looseness in it. So anyway, next thing to do is to undo the torque converter bolts. Alright, here is the transmission. Now, these 2 bolts from the top, you get them right from the top up here, which now has a big hole. Then there are a couple more bolts. On the front side, there's 1, 2, 3. You can get all these from underneath the car. And then in the back of the engine, this bolt goes in from the other way. It's actually pretty difficult to see this one. You got to get a light up there. You can also get that from the bottom. And then, of course, these are lower, so you should be able to get all these. But there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 on this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 on that other side. And then the torque converter is bolted on with Torx 50. They're not torqued very much, but you do have to counterhold the engine a little bit. Now that this transmission is out, I can finally access the flywheel. Now I'm also going to be changing this coolant line. You can see right here, it's kind of really easy to get to without the transmission in the way. But I'm going to go ahead and take the flywheel off to replace the rear main seal. Once I've replaced it, I'll go ahead and take the oil pan off and get it ready for reseal, to reseal it. And then probably what I'll do is I'll do what I need to do on this transmission, which is to put another torque converter, change the valve body. Then I'll put it back in here and bolt it in before putting the oil pan, because I want to make sure the oil pan is in the proper position when I set it up there. Another interesting thing here that has happened is that this engine was leaning down quite a lot on one side, and now it's almost flat. So I suppose these bars are flexing quite a lot. Another thing is that I used a strap to strap the transmission on there, and the transmission actually almost fell off that jack, which, I mean, as long as you're out of the way, it's fine, but if you drop the transmission hard enough, it will crack, and then you'll need to get another one. So what I would say is maybe get a little bit better of a jack, and we'll see. I'll see when I put it back in there if there's a position I could put this in that it's really stable, and I can show you. Alright, I removed the flywheel. Now the flywheel has a small plate on the front and a small plate on the back. There's a little pin there to locate it. I still marked on this plate, on the flex plate, where a lot of people call this a flywheel, but it's technically a flex plate. And I could see here, I mean, I guess the camera you can't see too much, but there is a lot of oil leaking from this rear main seal. Now going on top here, we have that big coolant light right there, which is conveniently very easy to get to when the transmission is out, so definitely should replace that. Alright, so I went ahead and installed this new hose here, which is made in Japan. There we go. Now, because of the positioning of it, I used heavy-duty silicone spray, which is down here. This is what I used to get it on, because it is very, very tight. My supposition is that you're supposed to take other stuff apart to replace that hose. So just use some lubrication, and you will be able to get it in there without damaging it. But if it definitely needs some type of lubrication, otherwise you're going to damage it. And I went ahead and removed the rear main seal by doing what people say to do on YouTube, which is just to put a screw in it, which it just became that crooked for me from pulling it out, otherwise it was straight. Now, the interesting thing I found with this rear main seal, there's the new one, but the interesting thing I found was that this seal was not installed straight. It was installed at an angle, which that's probably why it's leaking. You know, this car's been leaking oil since at least 80,000 miles, and it's probably been leaking oil for longer than that. Probably all the way back to 30,000 miles. So I think someone on the assembly line has maybe been installing these crooked, and that's why you have some V8s that don't leak from the rear main seal at all, and others that dump oil from the rear main seal. The way it was installed is that it was pushed in flush with the engine on the top, then as you got to the bottom, it actually stuck out quite a bit. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera, but I could definitely see it and feel it with my finger. Alright, so I got the lower oil pan off. Also removed the oil cooler and the engine filter. There's the lower oil pan. So now, go ahead and remove the upper oil pan. Now, I already installed the rear main seal just by very gently hammering it in using the old seal. Alright, there's the that's the upper oil pan. Now, you need to organize your bolts because there's a couple longer ones, couple short ones. I mean, if you mess them up, you should be able to figure out pretty quickly before you force it in there that it's not correct. Now here's the issue we're having there. There are the O-rings. These O-rings. Okay, so as we can see, all the O-rings here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. To make sure on the diagrams there's not more. I don't see that there would be more. The rest of them are stuck up there, but this is no longer rubber. It's hard like a piece of plastic. So that's going to be our issue with the with the weird oil pressure it's getting. So now that we have this off, now I'm not concerned about the pickup tube because the pickup tube has a metal crush gasket. So that's not going to go bad. We can see the job that the previous owner did. I mean, I guess the previous owner paid someone to do the valve cover gaskets, and I guess you can see there's a different silicone material there for the timing cover, but besides that, everything else looks good. Now I just need to clean it, and then I'll probably actually just leave this sit here, let the oil drip, and go ahead and take the pan off of the transmission. Alright, so now just gotten a delivery to replace the front springs, as this one is, the driver one is rusty on the bottom, and this one has a little bit of rust on the top. And it doesn't make any sense to not replace them right now, as there's so much stuff apart. Alright, so now I went ahead and cleaned the mating surface on the oil pan. I'll have to go back, well, not on the oil pan, on the engine before I get the flywheel back in. And what I'm going to do is put the transmission back in the car before I put the oil pan, because what I don't want to happen is that if the pan is too far this way and suddenly I put the transmission in and I bolt it, it may pull the pan towards the transmission, which would cause it to leak. So I want to make sure everything is perfectly lined up before the silicone cures. Now, one thing I did notice is whoever resealed the valve cover, not the valve, the timing cover, and whoever resealed the timing chain cover and the valve covers used a lot of silicone. And the problem I'm seeing is the front part of this piece here is not flat with it. There's a little bit of room. This piece is too far up. So, and there was a massive amount of silicone on the end of that. So, whoever did it used way too much silicone, which is very common with shops that I guess they don't know what they're doing. Before the transmission goes in, I went ahead and replaced this output seal here, and then I have a new coupling there. I don't remember what this piece is called that goes in between the bevel gear and the transmission. I have a new one. There's also a seal in there. It does not come with it, so I pushed it in. That's the old one. Now I'm replacing the torque converter seal. It wasn't leaking, but we are replacing the torque converter, so there's a high chance it will start leaking, and here it is. It's very dry, so I would not want to leave that in there. I have a brand new one right here. And the next thing I'm going to replace is also the valve body, because this is a 2007. The V8 from 2005 to 2007 had a valve body issue that at some point, if you're not having the issue with it, you will have a problem with the valve body. This one has had an issue with the valve body since we got it, so at 80,000 miles, and it's only gotten worse, and at this point now it's really bad, and if you keep driving with it, it'll flare, and you will destroy the clutches in the transmission, which that's going to be more expensive. And the torque converter, there's the old torque converter sitting right there, got a brand new one going in. I bought a donor transmission, which unfortunately is missing so much stuff from it that I'm sure the previous owner probably lied to me with the mileage. So we're not playing around with that. We're gonna I just have a brand new valve body and a brand new torque converter, which makes this car very expensive. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put that back in. Right, here's the transmission. Now we replace the torque converter seal. Alright, so I got the new valve body in, brand new, made in Belgium. Got all the wiring back, so just make sure you take lots of pictures so that you can get all the wiring in exactly the same position. Now, the other thing is that there is a couple bolts here. I'm going to show you a picture, and they get torqued to 10 Newton meters. So it doesn't sound very tight, but it's pretty tight for these small bolts. Now, here, you need to buy this, so you got the part number right there. That goes on the top of this, is when you take this off, it's like a little cap. Now, here is the torque sequence right there. Gonna take a look at it. I would definitely follow this and just slowly get it tighter and tighter. I did in 2 stages, 5 Newton meters and then 10 Newton meters. A lot of torque wrenches don't go that low, but that's what I did. And now it's on. Now to clean the surface, I'm using the acetone and an old t-shirt. If you use an old t-shirt, something a little rough, it'll come off pretty easily. Right now I'm working on the pan. And I put Goo Gone on the pan. I would not put Goo Gone on the transmission side, but on the pan it's fine, because then I'll just use brake clean to wash it all off. Alright, so there's the transmission pan. Really dark. Alright, so there's the transmission pan. Now, use silicone. Don't use too much silicone, because whatever is sticking out is going to be sticking inside the transmission. I mean, you can't really see it very well on camera, but well, on camera it looks like there's a lot of it. Maybe not. There's not very little coming out all around, so I think you just have to be used to using silicone. Now, I've never used silicone before, and I was able to have barely any, I mean, it's coming out all around, but very little. Because if you put too much, you'll have massive amount inside, and over time those pieces might break off and clog something. You definitely don't want that. Now, the torque for this is 2 stages. First stage is 10 Newton meters, and then the second stage is 25 Newton meters.